On a quiet residential street in Pontefract, West Yorkshire, sits an unassuming semi-detached house with neatly trimmed hedges and a small garden. And to any passer-by, 30 East Drive looks the kind of place you'd expect to find a retired couple or a young family building a future. But behind its closed doors lies one of the most infamous and chilling paranormal tales in paranormal history. But this isn't just another haunted house story. And the thin veil between life and death is seemingly being broken, where fear has taken on a form, and that form has a name, the Black Monk. Whether it's psychological suggestion, residual energy, or genuine paranormal phenomena, one thing is certain, there is something deeply wrong with this house. Its walls seem to remember pain, its silence feels intentional, and its shadows, well, some say they watch. When we step inside, the atmosphere itself feels oppressive, but not in a menacing or terrifying way. That is, when it's daylight. At night time, however, things can be seriously different. Now, many people have described 30 East Drive as being somewhat of a time capsule, but not in a quaint way. I think a lot of people see the old furniture, they smell the mustiness, they hear the stories, and they enter 30 East Drive full of fear and dread. A lot of people also arrive here out of curiosity. But for sure, many people go away thinking that this place is nothing but a time capsule. Now, if that time capsule can contain a presence from an unknown entity or unknown entities, then this is why a lot of people to this day feel that 30 East Drive is most certainly the most haunted house or property anywhere in Europe. Now, the 30 East Drive story, it kind of began in the 1960s when a family known as the Pritchards bought this property. The owners, Jean and Joe Pritchard, came here along with two of their children, Diane and Philip. Within days, the house began to reveal its dark nature, and what started as a small, odd occurrences quickly escalated into something terrifying and incomprehensible. Philip, who was just 15 at the time, was the first to witness what he described as a cloud of chalk-like dust that hovered mid-air before vanishing. This bizarre phenomenon was soon followed by pools of water mysteriously forming on the kitchen floor, even when no pipe or tap was leaking. Appliances would malfunction, lights would begin to flicker. More disturbingly, green foam would ooze from the taps. Do you not think it feels weird how a lot of the attention seemed to be diverted to Diane at the time of these events in the 60s? But yet it's Philip's room, which always feels a more suppressive out of all of the rooms. Because a lot of people say Philip's room.
Yes, it's very strange because the poltergeist activity was centred around Diane, the young girl. Now, her room, I don't get anything from that, any bad vibes, but it's Philip's room, and it does make you wonder why is there some kind of portal, as they call it, in that area, where spirits are coming in and out of that location.
So the kitchen, as you can see now, is relatively tiny. But it's here in 1968 when Philip came into the kitchen, or he was already in the kitchen, when this thin film of white powdery substance was seen to be falling, not from the roof, but maybe a couple of feet, a foot or a couple of feet away from the roof. And it was a thin line that kind of went all the way across. But the residue was falling on obviously any furniture that would have been here at the time. It was falling onto the floor, and it was completely unexplainable. But the kitchen, as you see, is really tiny. But this is just one incident which there were witnesses to. It wasn't just Philip. There were other people that saw this strange event occurring. There was also pools of water that would mysteriously appear, and every time it was wiped away, it would reappear. Even though nobody was in the kitchen, they'd made their way into the other rooms. And again, quite bizarre thing to happen. I would presume that the pipework in the kitchen was checked to make sure there were no leaks. But they could never explain not only the dust falling from the roof, but the pools that were suddenly appearing on the kitchen floor. Household items were flung across rooms with violent force. Even a heavy grandfather clock was reportedly tipped over as if it were made of cardboard. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the sinister targeting of Diane Pritchard. She was physically attacked on several occasions, dragged up the stairs by her hair, slapped, scratched and at one point even nearly strangled by an unseen force. Her screams echoed through the home on more than one terrifying night. Her family powerless to protect her from something they couldn't see or comprehend. In 1968, the local press had given the nickname or the term Mr. Nobody to this unseen force. There were two other names given to it, one being the Black Monk and the other being Fred. Perhaps calling it by a name was their way of coping or making the unexplainable feel less threatening. And despite countless efforts to rid the house of the entity, nothing seemed to work. Jean Pritchard, fiercely proud of her home, refused to be driven out by the chaos that unfolded around her. Attempts at an exorcism were not only futile, but seemed to enrage Fred. Walls wept holy water, unseen hands delivered slaps, people were shoved from behind, some even tumbled down the stairs. But the strange thing about this is, poltergeists very rarely attack people. They may seem sinister, they will throw objects, but they very rarely attack. Fred, however, was different. Though his early pranks left bruises and startled nerves, particularly targeting young Diane, his violence escalated as time went on. Many who have stepped into 30 East Drive since those early days have described the same sensations. Sudden chills, oppressive air, and a deep gut feeling of being watched. There's a weight to the atmosphere, a heaviness that wraps around you the moment you enter. Each room carries its own particular energy. The master bedroom is said to feel suffocating, as if someone or something is pressing down on your chest. The small bedroom, where Diane once slept, seems frozen in time, but has been the location of many strange disturbances. Even seasoned paranormal investigators have reported an overwhelming urge to flee the moment they cross the threshold. There's an almost sentient feel to the place, as if the house itself is observing, waiting. Over the decades, countless investigators, mediums and psychics have visited 30 East Drive, and many have arrived at the same unsettling conclusion. The house sits on a kind of spiritual fault line, a portal between this world and another. These so-called portals are believed to act as entry and exit points for spirits, or worse. Visitors have reported cold gusts of wind rushing through rooms with no windows open, the sudden appearance of strange symbols on the walls, and eerie sounds like whispering voices in languages no one can identify. Some theorise that the house's location near the site of an ancient priory and gallows plays a role. Energy, they say, has memory, and 30 East Drive may be sitting atop centuries of grief, suffering and rituals. At the heart of the hauntings is an evil figure known as the Black Monk. A terror-winged shadow, often seen cloaked in a dark robe, his face obscured. He has been glimpsed in doorways, caught on film as fleeting silhouette, and sensed looming behind people in mirrors. He is not just an observer, he is to many the house's dark core. Some say the Black Monk is not a playful ghost, some say he's a force of rage and darkness. Visitors have reported a dramatic drop in temperature before he manifests, and many have left the house physically ill, some claiming attachments that followed them home for weeks. Now, despite decades passing since the Pritchards vacated the home, 30 East Drive has remained active. Paranormal investigators continue to report poltergeist activity, objects moving, furniture tipping and unexplained sounds. The current owners do not live in the house, instead they have allowed investigators and filmmakers access, many of whom left with footage, EVPs and experiences that defy logic. But some say the house wants attention, that it feeds off the fear, the focus, the curiosity. And the more people that talk about it, the stronger it gets. Now, we believe that Joe himself most certainly passed away here at 30 East Drive, and it was in the bathroom where that sad event took place. As for Jean, the matriarch of the family, the one who kept everything together during these incredible hauntings. From what I've just been told, we believe she passed away last year. And did you say it was in some kind of old folks home, possibly? We believe it was in an old folks home. We obviously, we are open to be corrected, so if people wish to comment down below and tell us more. But however, what happened to Diane and Philip? Now, very little is ever spoken of the children. It's like they have simply vanished into obscurity. They're never in any local papers, they're never interviewed, they're never on any TV shows. And to say that 30 East Drive is perhaps the most documented and well-known cases, and especially more so here in the UK, along with the Enfield poltergeist. Now, that is a separate story for another day. But perhaps these two stories, Enfield poltergeist and 30 East Drive, they're up there with the most well-known of hauntings in a domestic property. But what happened to those two children? Why have they stayed quiet? Why have they never, ever gone public with everything that happened here? Now, I am going to be slightly controversial and perhaps go against everything I believe. But some do say that perhaps the children, being so young and easily influenced, and now I'm not saying I believe what I'm about to say, but some do think it may have all been fate. They may have been influenced by the parents, and because they were young, they just went with it. But that doesn't explain away the many witnesses that came into 30 East Drive, the people that saw objects being flung across the rooms. That doesn't explain the witnesses seeing this dust fall from not the roof itself, but a couple of feet away from the roof. This dust that was falling down to the floor. It doesn't explain away the witnesses that kept seeing these pools of water forming on the kitchen floor. The grandfather clock being thrown down the steps. Witnesses. More than one. We had a vicar, we had a priest. From all accounts, we even had police officers who witnessed strange events happening here. But why have the children stayed firmly quiet? Perhaps they were traumatised by it all and just do not wish to go back to that period in their time, in their childhood. They don't want to be reminded of it. We will never know. But it does seem really strange, really bizarre how that these two children who felt, witnessed and saw the most have always remained silent. Now, of course, memories of something so harrowing may be too painful to revisit, but that wall of silence definitely leaves a void, and in that silence, suspicion will always take root. So the moment you first walked into 30 East Drive, did you feel anything unusual, something instinctive, even before anything may well happen?
No. Obviously, for me, I'm one that has to encounter something. If anything, it was the smell that straight away hit me, because obviously it's musty type of, and I think that does get you in the vibe, but I need to actually encounter something, but I don't walk into a place and feel like that.
Well, it's one of those weird things, like you come to this location expecting everything to kick off. You've read the books, all the eyewitness events, and you're thinking, come on, there's got to be things flying around. It's a little bit more subtle than that so far from what I've experienced. The big things such as equipment like camcorders malfunctioning, switching off by themselves on my first visit. I captured a shadow figure, or what I expected a shadow figure at the top of the stairs. Again, it might not be, but it looked pretty convincing to me. And the whistling noises I've heard multiple times, and I can't explain So what do you say about that? But I tried to debunk those and I just can't. And other things as well, I've been sat in this room before and called out and heard tapping and knocking noises from the kitchen area. Now, if you're thinking that it's going to be the neighbours playing pranks, well, it's on the wrong side of the house because there's nothing adjoined to that side of the house. So, and there was no heating on, so no pipes clattering around, nothing like that. So again, how do you explain it?
Now the final question, and this could be controversial, but so many people have accused 30 East Drive of being nothing but a commercialised hoax, a money spinner. How would you respond to this after being here several times yourself?
I can probably understand why they think that. And like you say, you've got to experience it yourself. That noise has always made me think something's here. We wouldn't keep coming back, and especially me being a skeptic. I think it's because I want more. But I wouldn't class it as a cash cow. It's how you want to spend your money when all's said and done. But if you really believe, like, especially you believe, so I support that, and I'm the skeptic one. So I can see why people call it a cash cow, but you've got to be here to do it yourself. A lot of talk about portals in the house. Did you notice any particular areas that you felt like something was coming or going or just off?
It's a funny one. Portals, I wouldn't really say I'm a full believer of, but I do appreciate that entities, ghosts, whatever you want to call them, poltergeists, there could be places in either in buildings or outside in the open public domain, I don't know, where these entities can come and go. People say wells are portals, and apparently there's a well close to where we are here. Certainly in Philip's room, and I know people laugh at this, but there's a boiler in one of the room in Philip's room, isn't there, in the side, and that's supposed to be a portal. That one I'm always drawn to. Every time I go in Philip's room, I'm always drawn to that area. Again, whether or not it's just suggestion, but yeah, if I had to say, is there any portals at East Drive which I feel kind of drawn to, it would be Philip's. It would be in Philip's room. You may not believe in ghosts, you may think it's all folklore, or the imagination of a frightened family that spiraled into legend. But for those who stepped through the front door, who stood in the cold, dark hallway and felt the air shift without reason, belief becomes something harder to dismiss. But what happened after the hauntings reportedly faded and the family eventually moved on? What became of the Pritchards? Maybe the most haunting thing about 30 East Drive isn't what's seen or heard, but what has been left unsaid. And I guess the only way to truly understand the mystery of 30 East Drive is to come and experience it for yourself. So until then, keep an open mind, because sometimes it's not what you can see or what you can hear that you should be afraid of. It literally is what is lurking in those shadows.